I'm excited for today's conversation. I know I say that a lot, but I really do mean it. We're talking to Michael Carbonaro today. And the cool thing about this is you're coming to Colorado April 20th, which is very amazing.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah, my son and I, we got our tickets. We're coming to see you. We're making the trek from where we are. You're close, so I can't wait. But thanks for your time. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you too. That's right.
This
Yeah,
is
we've
very
been we've been in Colorado a bunch now.
Yeah,
Seems
so
to
we haven't
be
been able to make it. Well, we've only been here just about a year, so a little over a
okay.
year. So, when I saw you were coming, I just recently over the summer started watching reruns of the Carbonaro Effect, and my kid, he's 9, he's obsessed with you and what you do. It's just there's some classic bits like the wireless soda dispenser is probably one of his favorites because
It's a good
he
one.
loves soda. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but
Hey,
the question
it's a
he
kid.
asks me
Kids
off,
love soda.
they do, yeah. And he's always asking me, can we make something like that? And I'm like, I don't think we quite can. I don't want to spoil things for him because the fashion, and even for me too, the fascination is there. But I want to ask you right out of the gate, when you have people come to your show, people who have watched you on television and that sort of thing, what can people expect in a live show? Is it similarly the same, or is it mostly stage magic and that sort of thing?
It's all of that. Yeah, it's stage magic for sure. I think a lot of the Carbonaro Effect TV show was stage magic too. It was just not on a stage,
Right.
but maybe a little close-up magic, a little stage magic. But the live tour show, obviously everybody knows I'm a magician, so it's a little different than the TV show. But that doesn't stop me from being able to prank people, which is pretty amazing. Like still be able to pull the wool out from under your eyes, or no, pull the rug out from under you or the wool over your eyes. Uh, it's got audience participation. I bring people up. I come out into the crowd and play with people. And there's always that person that I have. There's that unknown factor, which is what I think really I loved about the TV show is that there's this electricity because you never know how it's going to go. It's a different person that I bring up or I'm playing with each night. So for me, I'm always on my toes. And, things disappear. I make two people from the audience disappear during the show. I prank somebody on stage where the audience gets to see it happen and the person on stage doesn't. I teach a prank. And then it's just a lot of, I guess the people get to meet me as more of like the master of ceremonies, the host, an actual showman, magician.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so cool. I mean, I've always been fascinated with magic. As a little kid, my grandfather worked in a magic shop and
Oh,
just
really?
going, yeah, well, I'm
Where?
obsessed. In Kansas City, Missouri,
Oh,
there
wow.
was a magic shop that worked. He did everything. He helped build the place. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm a magic nerd. I love it. I love everything about it. I do a few little things for my kid. He likes to
Oh,
watch
nice.
like the multiplying rabbits, the colored dye. You know, Showreel has been a fun one
Yeah.
recently that
How
I've
old is
been.
your kid?
He's 9.
30? No.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
just kidding. No, I'm 49, turning 50, but Showreel is a fun one I'm learning. It's just
Yeah.
kind of cool to watch. And even though I get some of it, it's still fun to just watch the allure. We went to the
Yeah.
Magic Castle, stayed at the hotel. They came out and did magic for us over the
Sure.
summer. It's just so fun to watch. And I would just be enamored and I can't wait because I think what you do is just so fun. And I think the element of surprise has to be one of the best parts of it, even though people have seen you, because you just don't know literally what to expect, I would imagine, because
Yeah.
it's so fluid.
Yeah, I all of that stuff is so amazing about magic. The everyone, it really is amazing. You say the allure. There's always just something so exciting to be shown something that for a second just makes your brain turn inside out and you're like, "Wait, I didn't think that was possible." Like I just didn't, there's a little trapdoor in the universe I didn't know existed. You see something disappear and you're like, "Wait, hold on a second." And it kind of like just ignites your brain on in a different place. And I think that there's people like you and me who are kind of nerds about it. Like it kind of hooks you right when you're a kid and you're just drawn to it. And then there's people who, really enjoy just watching it and not knowing how the secrets work. And I think what, the draw of performing for, even with the TV show, the Carbonaro Effect, and the stage show, it's really about like having fun, like everyone just kind of having a good time together. It's like, yeah, the magic's amazing. And you might be like, wow, how is that done? But that's not even, the magic is sometimes, I think, when I perform, almost a means to be able to be doing, this is the secret thing that is the reason why we're all here, is that we're like going to have a good time together. We're going to laugh. We're going to be, sharing this moment this evening, and the magic that we're doing is just sort of there as a something to do. I mean, not to underplay the magic. I love magic, and people are drawn to the magic, and I love doing it. But there's something about like it's the experience of performing as a magician is way beyond the tricks. I think that it's really about creating a whole experience for people in a show and a good time, and that's what I'm loving doing.
Yeah. When I watch things, when I watch you or say other folks like Adam Trent or all these other people that do this, there's just well, even watching the show, one of the things, well, there were many things that I loved about that. It's just the moment that you get to have with people. I think that to me, as you emphasized, is just really special because like we're having this conversation in an interview format, which is really cool. But then that's a special moment. But then seeing you on stage or on television and just watching people respond to you, I feel like magic, just the whole thing is very emotional, almost a spiritual experience in a way, because it's just so different than any other form of entertainment that you might be able to see. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you do and what makes what you do so fun, because it's different than anything else.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about the show, because that was a lot of fun. And I recall it sort of around COVID pandemic times, things stopped, but I've watched other interviews that you've done. And if I'm understanding quickly, that show was a lot to do. Like, I can't even imagine the production side of it is one thing, but then going from location to location, doing tricks, having people who know you and see you, which you reveal a little bit of that on the show where you kind of people go, I know who you are. What were those moments like when you were in the throes of that show and just producing it, whether it be in Chicago or were other places that you went?
Yeah. Yeah, we did the first two seasons were in Atlanta. That's where we started. And then the next three seasons were in Chicago. And yeah, there's kind of I think people kind of just assume that COVID is what shut the show down, which is not true. I brought
Right,
the show to an end. I was like
right.
ready to end on a high note. I never, when I first dreamed of doing a hidden camera, I was like, I want to be the Ashton Kutcher of magic. I want to like do a kind of punk type show that's with magic tricks and in my mind, I'm like, man, if I really put my mind to it and grind it out, I bet I could come up with like maybe 10 solid episodes of great hidden camera magic. So I can't believe how much with the team that I put together and got to work with that we were able to do. I mean, we blew ourselves out of the water time and time again. And I couldn't believe how many tricks we were coming up with doing. And it was incredible. And I far surpassed everything that I wanted to do with the show. And it was like just starting to get to the point where, both I had done what I wanted to do and beyond was already there. And you just start to feel it. There's a time that's like, it's time to put this one to rest and look on to another project. And then there's also the grind, like you mentioned, of the show. I mean, it was really mentally and physically demanding of a show. I'm so grateful for it. And it was amazing. And I'm so proud of the work that we did on the show. But it was really, it was a blender in my mind. I mean, it beat me up for all the time I was doing it, because in order to do it the way it needed to be done and the way I wanted to control and be able to make everything great, I had to be there for, obviously all the writing and prep of the show. A lot of times on a show, you have a team who does the location scouting, and then you have, after you shoot, you have the people who are, or you have the people who write it for you, and then you do the show and you record it, and then you have the people who edit it in post-production. But for me, it's like I was there writing it. I was there location scouting because it's magic. I had to be on the ground and check out these places if they'd even work. I was at every production meeting. And then when after being on camera all day long, every day in these new locations, trying out these tricks and doing all this stuff, I then, once we were finished, would be in the editing room. Like, I cut every frame of that show with these editors. Like, we sat there. Like, magic is really tough to translate on camera. You have to make sure that the camera's not seeing the trick, or you're getting the great reaction from the person while the magic's happening. It's a real different language. So I had to be involved in all of that too. So by the time we were done editing and the show started, it was time to start writing the next one. So the ride never stopped. So it was like all 5 seasons were just like, I think I got like 130-day break in that whole ride. And it starts to just wear you down in a way that, to me, it was like, okay, this is not a sustainable structure that I would be able to keep doing this like this without like really starting to disconnect and lose touch with like what I'm even doing. It's like you start to feel like you're like, the network wants you to make more chicken nuggets to feed the people, and you're like, well, I need a minute to kind of like think through what I want to do next and like what's going to be great next. It's like, no, you got to do it now. And you're like, oh, okay. And then that was like starting to catch up, right when I'm like, we've gone well beyond, and that's catching up. It's like you just feel it. You're like, it's time to bring this to an end. So I chose to stop the show after the 5th season, and I ended the last episode of the Carbonaro Effect series by turning into a kid. That's the final episode.
I remember so vaguely.
Yeah.
I remember, and I was like,
yeah, it ends with me as a kid, and I don't even come back. Like, the kid reveals you're on the Carbonaro Effect, and the credits roll with the kids. And I just thought that was the best, like, Peter Pan flying out the window ending to that series. So
I remember that so clearly because, that was just such a cool moment to end things. And I appreciate you educating me on that. I know the time was simultaneous, obviously, but that was just crazy. I want to ask you about that because one of the things I've learned from talking to great people like yourself is sort of behind the scenes, as far as as much work goes into doing these things. And there's so much that we don't see, or most people don't see. They see the final product, 25, 30-minute episode. We laugh, we go, this is amazing. But the other side of it is very stressful. When you're in the midst of that and you've got the pressure that you're putting on yourself, trying to do the very best you can do, and then you've got the industry side of things, the network going, we need this now. Like, how do you off gas and just like maintain your sanity? Because that's so stressful, I would imagine.
yeah, I'm not sure I did. I don't think so. I totally was going insane. I mean, um it was like you start to go into the reality becomes completely distorted. I was spending most of my day on camera with an earbud, with people like talking to me from the control truck. Everything I say can be heard, so I'm like just constantly being like surveillanced. And then as soon as it was like, okay, we can stop for a second to have lunch, there's 1,000 questions. Like, you start to lose those like spaces where you need a minute to just like allow your brain to let the neurons reconnect and have just like a moment to kind of, so those are very hard to find. And I'm not sure I was finding them, or it started to become, I started to become conscious of the fact that that it wasn't possible to find those moments. And that's what started to really like, oh, that, this, to be able to sustain that and still produce a great show. And they tried everything. Like, well, what if we have like the people write it for you? And then what if they edit it and you could take a minute? And it was like, yeah, but then I can't make this. Then I can't. We tried that. Then I would like be shown what I was supposed to. I was like, oh, but it's like, I don't know how to do it. I had to like, in order to like sell it on the day behind that counter in front of that person, it was like, had to be like part of, I had to be in the writer room and like generate that myself to be connected to what this work even was. So it was like a conundrum. Like, we want you to keep doing that thing, but in order to make it, I mean, that's, I think with any project, I think in any movie or television, you're always up against the clock, and everything needs to be faster, and tomorrow, and I mean yesterday, and but no, I'm not sure I was maintaining that kind of sanity, and that was one of the reasons where it was like, okay, I have a limited, it's time, I know everybody wants to keep going, but like, I think this is, before this breaks to a place. And there were days where it would break. I mean, man, luckily my magic team was so like friends of mine who really helped pull me through. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. But we yeah, I don't think I did maintain a sense of sanity during it. It was definitely an insane, warped reality that I lived through for that long. And I'm still like, I haven't shot that show since I think 2019 was the last time we shot it. And I'm still sort of mentally healing from that crazy, crazy ride and process of making that show, which is completely different than doing the live stage show, where live stage show is like, and I've done other television shows too, like guest starring on stuff. And I was in a film as the lead in a movie one time, and I got to like take that ride, which was stressful also, but it was just completely different. There was more time to find those moments to yourself because everybody else had their thing to do. But I still am sort of still kind of, my head still spins after that ride.
That's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, not in an
And it's just
unbelievable.
magic tricks. You're like, it's just magic tricks. Like,
Well,
what are we
yeah, but I
talking?
think there's
But
so
it's
much
like,
more to that.
no, there is.
So let's say you're filming, there's episodes I think of like you're in a marketplace and there's
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands of people coming in and out, and you have people come up to you. On the average, how many times do you have to do something, an effect or an
Mm-hmm.
experiment, whatever the case might be?
Probably got 4 shots at each bit to try and
Wow,
catch the right kind of reaction from someone before we had to move on to the next one. Yeah.
that's
And
insane.
it
That's
is insane. Yeah, totally. And it
because
was
either people know
awesome,
you
but
or they go, "Oh, I know," or they're just
I
not
would
into
say,
it.
yeah, we did, I would say maybe like, I don't know, maybe toward the end there, I would say that in a public place, maybe 3 out of 10 people would recognize me right out the gate. And we always knew right away. So that was,
Well,
you
I'm
could just see
sure they could
someone,
just.
like you just see their reaction, like, they know. So that was helped. Some of the disguises really helped. It was amazing how many people I would go through the whole experience with, who then I would reveal to them. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I've watched that show. But yet I just was in this whole experience with them and fooled them, because I guess you just like, out of sight, out of mind. You're not watching TV. It's just different when you're in that environment. In fact, if you recall, there was one in the last season we did. There's a great segment, maybe one of the best narrative type act 4 final, bit of the show, tricks called the witch tenant, where I was having somebody help me kind of turn a house around to be flipped and sold. And the former tenant
Yes.
arrived, and it was like all this weird witchy stuff around, and she arrived as a young woman, and then right in front of the guy turned into this old woman, and then that old woman turned into a cat. Like these crazy things happen in that, and the guy really believed it. It was amazing. But there was one other person that I had done that to who freaked out, screamed when when that young woman turned old. The lady just couldn't take it and freaked and ran out of the house. And I had to like go out there and get her in the street and be like, hey, hold on. And I explained to her, I'm like, I'm Michael Carbonaro. You're watching I'm recording you with this hidden camera TV show. And she was like, oh, wait a minute. She's like, I know that show. She's like, oh yeah. She's like, I've even seen your live tour show. But so I was like, what? So here's a woman who knows the TV show, has seen me perform live on stage, and yet still just being in that environment on that day just didn't connect the dots until I said it to her that that's what was happening. She was more willing to allow her mind to believe that she just like witnessed an actual witch in front of her than to kind of put the pieces together that, and it's just, that just really always fascinates me about how we can live on so many different realities and channels. Like TV is TV. I'm in my real life right now, and she's just not connecting the dots. Pretty
I
wild.
could see that. Like if I were in New York and somehow stumbled into an Impractical Jokers sketch, not a sketch, but like
Yeah.
something that they're running, even though I've seen the show a million times, I would probably get sucked into the moment because you just start thinking, especially if I had my kid with me and we're like in the midst of life, father son moments where I'm like answering questions and we're going through the day. But I just think it's cool. I think you're cool what you've done and just how you've made so many people's lives better. I know you've talked about this in other interviews, but I'm interested to know just from a different perspective, like where did this all start for you, Michael? Like when did you know the magic was something that you were interested in and it just consumed your life and here you are now?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like magic kind of comes to you. I like it feels almost like I was just it was part of my instinct to just
Mm,
love anything that was all aspects of the art of illusion. Just something about, whether it's filmmaking or horror, special effects. I loved monsters. I wanted to be a makeup artist first before anything else. I loved movie monsters and special effects and things you could do behind the scenes, puppetry that make this monster look real, but this is how it really functions. I was just so excited by that. Like anything that you could do to manifest like a real something from your imagination and see it actually happen in front of you it was just like inherent in my soul. I just loved it. And I really think that that was the love first before there was really the love of performing. Like I didn't even kind of know I wanted to be a performer first. It was really more about creating those
mm.
special effects. And to be a movie makeup artist was my I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was like so sure of it. And it was through, it was a weird little story where I was practicing special effects makeup and I was making a Freddy Krueger monster mask. And I went to a local magic shop where I'm from in Long Island because I had heard that they had like masks there and makeup around Halloween and that there was a guy there who knew about special effects. And I was trying to find a kind of paint because I kept painting my mask and the paint would crack when the mask was flexible and I could not find the answer. We didn't have the internet. And I was like, how do you paint something with something that's flexible so that when the mask moves, the paint doesn't all crack off? So I went to the magic shop in Hicksville, Long Island, to ask this question, and there I was, and I got the answer that you like mix like kind of like an adhesive into the paint so that it turns more flexible. And while I was at that store, I was like just checking out all the magic tricks. And I, of course, was always watching David Copperfield, which I was very drawn to as well. And I started like looking at, there was something about the wonder of what was present in a magic shop that really opened up like, wow, I love all this stuff. I love magic tricks. I love jokes. I love like pranks. I love horror. I love like all, it was all here. And so I started picking up some tricks, learning them, and I would show them to my friends. And then it was like through that performing of tricks that I really kind of, my personality was like finding its way through in a way that when I was doing makeup, like alone in my basement, like making a Freddy Krueger mask out of
I
clay
love it.
all alone is like one world, which is a beautiful world, by the way. But getting to be in front of people and like being quick on my feet and making them laugh and creating these moments and I started to like develop the love of performing, which then led to a love of acting, which is still in that same world of like creating an illusion of something. So it was an interesting little trajectory that I still bounce around with a lot. I still like talk to my manager and my agent all the time about like, I want to get more like television work, just acting roles and comedy acting roles. Like, let's get on a sitcom. Let's do, more movie stuff as well. Cause I love like all of those aspects of illusion.
Wow, so well said. I can relate in so many different ways. I think in some ways which has influenced me to do this and just talk to people and peel the curtain back, so to speak. It's just so cool. I just there when I watch your show, I always think to myself, or anything that you've done, what would I have done if I had been in that place at that time and run into you? Like, how would I respond? Because I think it's so intricate and so artistic and just you're a great person. And I feel like the moment would just be fun in the sense, even when I spoke to Adam a couple years ago and we started having this conversation. He's like, have we ever met before? Have we ever talked before? And I kind of felt like the entrance to a moment where he was going to perform, which he didn't, and I wasn't expecting it, but it's just that connection. It's so cool.
Yeah.
When you meet people and you meet your fans, I know you do meet and greets for your show. Is there a common question that you get asked a lot where you go, okay, I know where this, can you look at their face and their eyes light up and you kind of know almost in a premonition sort of way, like, okay, can you tell me how you did this? Do you get that a lot? I'm just interested to know.
No, it's funny. A lot of people in the meet and greet very like they don't ask how the tricks were done,
That's cool.
which is pretty neat. I do find a lot of like I feel like there's a bit of relief when they come and see the show, the live show, like having been a fan of the TV show, when they get to see me right in front of their actual face on stage performing a trick that's real, that they kind of like, because there's a lot of people who think that because it's on TV, it's camera tricks or digital effects or editing tricks and actors, and it's not real people. So like all those like suspicions and accusations swarm around, and justly so, because there are a lot of people who do stuff fake, like on the internet. There's like all these pranks that aren't really pranks, and it's like people, they get suspicious. So there's sort of like this excitement to be like, I was right there, and you actually did one of those tricks where you were standing over there and then suddenly you were standing next to us in the audience, and we have no idea how you teleported, and I thought you could not really do that in real life, like maybe that was just a camera trick. Like that's amazing. So they like get so excited to see that it's real, and by real I mean of course a real trick, but not like so there's that. And then there's a lot of people ask like, when are you going to bring the show back? Like, is there not going to be another
Oh, I'm
season? Like
sure.
that's a big question. And I'm always like, no. And I've got a whole bunch of different magic projects for television that have been kind of been in development, and we're trying to find the right angles to frame them and sell them and get somebody to it's a long process, and it takes time, and I'm excited. Like I've got some really killer ideas for new television magic stuff, that when if it clicks and it moves forward and I get to pull it off, awesome. I think a lot of people think, they're like, oh, you have another show, we'll just do it. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, that's not how it works. But
No, not even close.
no, no, not even close. I know. And I feel like, a lot of times that there has to be a respect for, I have a lot of sometimes I never, it's possible to miss something without wanting to have it back. And I missed the Carbonaro Effect, but I knew this. I never thought to myself that I made a mistake in bringing it to an end. Like it was time, and it's like that took its ride, and it was time to look ahead to something else. And I've been working on, especially going out on the road and getting to meet fans and perform in a live situation. And I'm sort of this character that they don't get to see on the show. They're like, oh, you're like a showman, like a Johnny Carson, like a leader of, master of ceremonies, host. You're funny. A lot of people say that in the meet and greet. Like, I didn't know you were so funny. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you? I thought my show was funny. And they're like, no, your show is funny, but like, you're always playing like a serious, real person on the show, or now you're just like kind of letting loose in a way that we didn't even know you were so funny. And I'm like, yeah. So like, how do I bring those worlds together? So like a lot of these projects were based that I'm working on now with like how to take that persona and bring it into this world of, Carbonaro that I've created, where not only do I get to kind of let myself be more of that presence, but also get to bring on people who are fans of the show who now want to be part of it. Because that's another thing that comes up a lot. People say, oh, I love your show so much, I wish I could be on it, but I know who you are. And you're like, right, but like, isn't there a way that you could be part of this world even though you know who I am? And the answer at the live tour show is yes. So like, what's the TV version of bringing that all together? And that's kind of really the impetus of how each of these projects, and I've got like 4 of them, they're all kind of the same thing in a weird way, like all roads lead to heaven in my mind. I'm always sort of working on the same like thing, like whatever the illusion is going to be, but there's kind of like different channels that these projects are taking. So it's, which is good, because hopefully, some network or streaming service or, production company kind of takes to one version of taking that ride, and hopefully having a bunch of them out there at once, just trying to get it together, um, something will move and fly. And if not, that's okay too. Cause when I did the Carbonaro Effect, I was really, I had an offer from NBC, like after I was working on doing first the segments with Jay Leno on the Tonight Show. That's where I really started doing hidden camera magic. I was doing
Yeah.
these segments on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and NBC was talking about like, hey, is there a whole show here? And I'm like, totally, because like since college, I'm like, what's the special effects magic, like candid camera show? So I was like, oh, already like, how do we take these little things I'm doing on the Tonight Show and make them bigger and greater scenarios? And I was ready for it. But when I met with them, it just like they weren't seeing it. They were like, well, who would be the host? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I would be the host. They're like, oh, I don't know. I think maybe we would hire like Neil Patrick Harris or someone to be the host. And then maybe there'd be like other people like you doing these tricks. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, no. And then they didn't want to give me any control. And I was like, eh. And I had nothing else on the table, but I turned them down. And like, here I was in Los Angeles, with no television deals, and here was NBC, like a major network with an offer. And I was like, that's not it though. And like, I knew that wasn't going to be what it needed to be. So I have a kind of alarming, sometimes to myself, alarming sense of, or just, I don't know, confidence, or there's something like where I'm just like, nope, I'd rather wait for this to be right and to do the thing that needs to be done so that people can experience it. And that was like one of the coolest lessons and decisions I made, was just kind of taking a pause there and going, no, not until this is like going to be able to be built. And I think a lot of other magicians, I've had magician friends who kind of get lost in the TV world, where they're like, oh, and then we recorded it, and then when I saw the way they cut it, it was a mess, and then it didn't look magical, and they shot it from the side. And I'm like, oh yeah, you gotta own all that. Not you got to be in control of all that. You have to structure these things so that you are the artist. Like, and it's so hard. I mean, it was really hard, but truTV and Simon Fields, the producer who came to me to put together a show for truTV, really trusted what I had done before and what the vision was, and really offered me that like control, where it was like, you know what, you are the expert of that, so like we're going to listen. And not that we didn't fight a hell of a lot all the way through, as every show does, but like they really did trust, like, you're the magician and you know what you're talking about, so we'll allow you to have that control. So that was probably one of the most important things. So I always think about that when I'm like sort of being like, oh, I want to get one of these new projects off the ground, and it's like, if someone doesn't see it, they don't see it, and we just wait or move on or what.
I love it. So you have obviously demonstrated, even in your younger years, such a sensibility of business and wise decision making. Do you attribute that to family, to parents, to the way you were raised as a kid, or maybe influences of other people in your life that really taught you the business savvy? Or is it just a natural thing that you feel that you have? You're very confident. Obviously, you have to be in what you do, but it exudes. I wish I was making those types of decisions at such a young age, but
Yeah,
I'm interested
wow.
in that piece. I think that will be very interesting to people who don't know you or who
Yeah.
think they know you in some sort of way, whether it be on television or meeting you somewhere along the line.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear, because I know it's show business and you really need to know the show and you really need to know the business, but I do rely on a lot of other people to help me along with that business side of so many things. I'm actually, to hear you say that and then to kind of like rewind in my mind what I just said, it does kind of create that picture that like I'm this like business savvy kind of guy. And I guess there is a lot that I should be proud of. And maybe that's why I kind of like underline it in an interview like this. I'm like reminding myself to like hold to those, truths and guns, so to speak. So, cause I kind of like usually think of myself as not like strong enough in that world. Like, oh, if I had been a little bit more business savvy, I'd be able to funnel this through better or push that project through or be more of a hustler, you know? So it's funny because I don't really have that perception of myself. And I have a lot of people on my team, as they say, is my manager, who I kind of throw that to. And it's like, I'm like, here's what I'm thinking about this, and here's why it makes me nervous, and how do we like protect that, and let them kind of say, well, it's if this is what you're most concerned with, let's start here and make sure that that's there. And like I'll sometimes be really like, I'm not going to move until they say that, and it's like, well, let's not start there. Let's start with like, what do you need, and then let's like let's like present that and see if like that they're amenable to that world, and let's build it from the positive place instead of like start like I probably I might just like structure that meeting all in the wrong way, like being on the defense and being so concerned about all of those things. So I do rely on the help of others on how to kind of like craft what it is I want to have and be secure about, and allow them to like help me figure out how to get that on the business side.
I love it because I think about the fact that when you get that first offer at a young age from NBC, most people, when they start out in this industry, are hungry and young, and not that you weren't, and will just take everything and anything. And then I talk to them now and they're like, oh God, I wish I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have done that. But hindsight's always 2020. But the fact that you stood your ground and you
Yeah.
went the way that you did, I mean, things could always be different, but
Yeah, and I
obviously
still
you've
have
had
those
so,
too. Like
yeah,
I have some
I
things
can
along the
imagine.
way that I'm like, oh God, I wish I didn't say yes to that, or I didn't do this. But like,
You're like,
but no, it's funny because I had the one lawyer that I had asked for their advice in looking at one of those early TV contracts. That they were like, take the show, like do the show. They're like, no, not a lot of people get an offer to be on television in this town, and I was like, nah. And I was like really glad that I didn't. So yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine they're like, we want a Michael Carbonaro type, not you, but the old standard, what he kind of like you, looks like you, acts like you, but we don't want you, which happens a lot in your business, unfortunately. But that is the nature of the business, I guess, from what limited experience I have just talking
Yeah.
to people, because it's so weird, like how it works. But I tell you what, you've been impactful on our lives. Your show, I mean, as we watch it all the time, it's just fun to watch. And clips of you doing your live show on YouTube. I think that's what's cool about your business, is that you have all these ideas and all these things you want to do. And that is what keeps you going. One last question I have to ask, like, out of all the things that you've done, all your experiences and interactions, it's a two-part question. Number one, do you find validation important to you, whether it's in an interview, people saying nice things about you? And two, if so, what do you find the most validating in what you do in your business of illusion, magic? I mean, storytelling, I feel like, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I try very hard to remind myself that there's no amount of validation that someone's going to like say to me that's going to really make the difference. Sometimes you feel like I feel like that's what I need or want someone to give. And that's what I'm like hungry for. But I've, throughout the course of my life and different projects I've done, I've heard the most beautiful and incredible things from even like famous people who've said really generous and wonderful things to me about the work that I do. And then yet you're there the next day, like still hungry for that validation. And it's like you realize that there is no amount of validation that anyone is going to give you, that is going to feed what I'm really hungry for, which is the knowledge that I'm validating. I feel validated with my spirit that I'm doing what I want to do to the best that I can do it, and I'm happy with that. And that's the validation that has to be satiated. And if there's ever a time when I feel like I haven't hit that yet, and you don't want to be too much of a perfectionist that you don't do anything, but like sometimes if I have a secret dream that I haven't quite pulled off, and I know it's like on that back burner and somewhere inside, I'm never really going to be happy until I get that thing across the line. nothing anyone says is going to fix that. So it's like always kind of reminding myself to return to, all right, well, what's going to make me go, yeah, you did it. That's what you wanted to do. Even if everyone hated it, what's going to make me go, but that's what I wanted to do. And I'm so happy I did that. So that was the first part of the question. And what was the second part?
Well, second part is you answered it really. So there's not really anything in particular that you feel like you need to validate. You just the fact that you're doing good work and people appreciate what you do. I mean, that in itself has to be.
Yeah, I will add, and it's not to say that it's not awesome and wonderful, because like I was saying, there's a little bit of that, sometimes the perfectionist part, which I think as artists, you have a vision for how something needs to be, and you have all of this stuff that you want to do or haven't hit the mark on yet. And there's a danger of thinking because you haven't done that there's an overall failure here. And that's not good either. It's important to remind myself to be proud of and feel excited about the things I have done along the way, which sometimes you forget. And when I have a fan come up to me and share that I brought them so much laughter to their home, like during COVID, or maybe like a relative was sick or they were sick and they watched me in the hospital, or just thank me for the joy they brought to their house or themselves. It's like, I really had to I love to just like hear that and take that in and be like, thank you. And like remind myself like, okay, maybe you didn't think that prank you pulled off with the thing worked out as well as it should have, but like, this was what it was about. And like, that's a beautiful thing to remember and hear, like accept that in. But then you have to balance it with, because then you get haters who are going to say that, it's this, and you want to keep your wall open, but not too open. So it's sort of like a little bit of a dance between those, like making myself feel happy about it, hearing the joy I am bringing, and keeping that going, and sort of blocking out the things that you don't need to hear or shouldn't worry about hearing.
Right.
So yeah, but it's something that I'm not a master at. And it's always like just kind of having awareness of like, where am I taking it in? Where am I checking in with myself? Where am I just going to deflect or not worry about that? And it's a constant ride of all those things.
I would imagine, just as a caveat to that, I was watching an interview with Adam Savage from the Mythbuster days. We got to speak to him a couple years ago. He said something very similar. It's like the most challenging thing as a public figure or as a celebrity, so to speak, which is such a polarizing term. But what you said, the dance of keeping everything in check. Well, just know there's a 9-year-old in this house, a 30-year-old kid, 9-year-old who loves the wireless soda stream trick. I mean, that's just the cool. I mean, everything you did was awesome, but that was a fun one. Michael, thanks for your time and your graciousness. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much for that. And best of luck to you. And I hope to catch you in Colorado when I come on over there.
Absolutely.